It's time to talk with Jay Foss.
Thanks so much for calling in. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome. I appreciate you too, Jay Foss.
The magic happens when you have the right person in the right place at the right time.
If we're having fun, everyone else is going to have fun naturally.
Keep it local radio.
I'm obsessed with transformations on this show. And so I guess that in this case, you are that paradigm shift. You are the thing that transforms people. That's what people call me.
Want to connect with Jay? Dial in.
But then the question is everyone tuned into the right frequency?
Are you tuned in?
Making our corner of the world a little brighter.
Did you make the right decision here? Like, are you, did you bite off more than you can chew?
In figuring out what makes people tick whenever we start something new.
Yeah.
There's always that question of,
raising your inner voice.
wait, was this too much? Did I start hiking a mountain that's a little too high for my level of
With
experience?
Jay Foss.
It's a quote by Thoreau. The price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it.
Not just another talk show.
We cover all things that make us human.
It's time to be heard.
How can my values and how can these inner thoughts that I have help me be a more whole human being?
Online and on air.
We can't legislate being a good, decent human being. So what can we do? We can become more active in this community.
Raising your inner voice with Jay Foss.
Hey, party people. Thanks so much for tuning in once again. It is a Sunday evening, and we take this liminal space to just figure out what makes you tick, what makes me tick. Because, see, I have this strange belief and view that we are all actually interrelated and interconnected with each other in ways that we may not even know, we may not be aware of. And I appreciate you taking the time to spend together figuring out your own life and listening to me as we do deep dives. We happen to have an amazing guest on this evening. Miss Molly Brown is founder and CEO of Mindset Engineering. She loves to know how things work, and I might even impose and say that she loves to know how people work. See, she started out working in military intelligence, then aerospace, and continued to study her beloved physics until the physics was inseparable from consciousness. We're going to talk a lot about consciousness tonight. So hopefully you are buckled in and ready for a ride like that. It took some time to understand what that meant, but when it fully landed on Molly, the implications led her to change from mechanical engineering to mindset engineering. Because every one of the things we're building on the outside is a reflection of what's on the inside. So Molly, thank you so much for being here. Mindset engineering. Break that one down for me.
Sure. So my background is taking things apart, figuring out how they work.
Yep.
At the same time, the physics approach or the science and engineering and science are actually different. I know we think of them as subjects in school, or science would lead you into engineering.
Yeah.
So we think that they would be the same, but science is like, what are the fundamental principles, the tiny laws, rules that we can understand and then build bigger ideas out of those. And engineering is kind of observing the bigness of how things work. The apple falls out of the tree, the birds fly, and starting to be like, how does that work? So you have kind of this engineering approach of taking things apart, understanding how big things are working and to understand smaller things in the world. And then the science approach of understanding fundamental small things and then building them up. And I've enjoyed studying both of those and playing in both of those domains, the small up and the big down, which is, it's kind of a translator job. You know, it's all in English, but there are such profoundly different views of looking at things and understanding things that I've enjoyed playing back and forth on them, and it's given me a different perspective in both of those. So being in an engineering role in a corporate, a corporate aerospace company, but having this jumping back and forth between these different kinds of camps, understanding things, I was seeing it. I was seeing the problems we were solving very differently than the people around me were seeing them. And a lot of people around me were jumping back and forth between camps too. They're jumping back and forth between business and engineering, which is again two totally different ways. But they're seeing you introduced Sunday as a liminal space, so they're seeing a different liminal space between engineering and business than you're seeing if you're bridging the gap between science and engineering. So I realized after years of root cause investigations, like engineering root cause investigations, we don't have any technical problems. All the technical problems, the root cause of the technical problems keeps coming back to the real world is different than the model. And then we had a
wait, can you expand on that a little bit more before you move on for me? I'm probably going to have you stop and explain a lot of things to me because I like to really absorb things. And so when you say the reality is different than the model, what do you mean by that? Okay,
so I'll kind of just walk you along, my trajectory of understanding that, because it first occurs, I first see this in a literal setting of an airplane. And we have a model in a computer, a mathematical model or a computer simulation or lab tests, a bunch of different non-reality things, not airplanes flying in the sky things that we're using to design the parts before they go out, to design, test, to understand how they're going to work.
Okay.
And it's a big suite of science models, engineering models, computer simulation models, business models. How much is it going to cost? A bunch of stuff. And all of those models, it's a giant stack of assumptions about the real world. Like we assume gravity works like this, and we have a lot of the laws of physics. We have really good understanding that we have grounding for those assumptions.
Right.
It's tested. We have lots of tested experience working with those assumptions. And so when we design something in the model and we test it in a smaller version of reality, because we are not building an airplane and flying it to test everything. We're doing it in a lab. We're doing it in a computer. We're doing it on a different airplane. It's a little different and, trying something new on it, but it's not exactly how it's going to be. They're all adjacent to reality. They're all trying to imitate reality safely and cheaper and for all the reasons. And then when you build something in a model and it works and it should work, and then you send it out into the real world to live on an airplane, to go fly and do its thing, to live its life as it's supposed to in the real world with gravity, how it really works, and air, how it really works, and all of the things, and it breaks, something happened in reality that isn't in our model. There's a discrepancy between reality and the model.
Yeah. Okay.
So, as an engineering, as the engineering company, we'll get more data hypothesis, right? We'll go get more data about the real world and use that to update, inform our models and make our models more like the real world.
Yeah.
So I got to go build and play in a sandbox of data that way. And I had
Do you like data? Not everyone likes data. Do you like data?
I do like data, and my understanding of it and relationship to it now is so different than it was back then. But I had this, right out of college, I spent a couple of years in the military doing analysis and things in a different kind of data set than numerical technical data. But I like data. I like plots and graphs, all the things that people who don't like math don't like. I love all of those things.
Thank goodness.
So we go out and get a bunch of data that from the real world and start putting it in these models and kind of going around to engineers and business leaders, all the finance models, business models, engineering models, aerodynamic models, all the models that we have, and plugging data, offering data to them. Mm-hmm. And what I saw happen over and over and over again is people who spend their time living in the models argue for any data that supports their model and argue against any data that doesn't support their model.
Okay.
So meaning like if you assume you're 140 pounds and you step on the scale and it says like 148, you're like, no, it's probably the ground's uneven, or like I drank a lot of water, right? You just start being like, no,
let me empty my pockets, take off my shoes. Yeah.
Right. That's not true. And because your mind just has like a point that it's entrained to, it's expecting, and anything outside of that, and the bigger the deviation, the bigger creativity the story gets to try to reconcile it back to that. And so, I saw this so many times in so many places with like technically very proficient, technical, educated individuals with decades of experience in the industry and with things. And so after the initial rush of just being like, is this just people's egos? They don't want to be wrong.
Right.
But seeing it over and over in all these different business places, technical places, and I'm a technical person. So when I see it with business people, I'm like, oh, it's ego. But then when I see it with technical people, I'm like, right? Maybe it's something different because I have my own expectation of it. So when we start seeing it all over the place, and with people who have financial incentives to change their model, to get different results in the real world, and still clinging to the model and unable, like intellectually, emotionally, something unable to accommodate data from that isn't what their model expected.
Yeah.
And it's not 100% of the time, but it's enough of the time that we weren't getting the technical problems solved. And that was so I saw that so many times. And as an engineer involved in a root cause investigation, or a series, years of different root cause investigations, all leading to the same point.
Dear listener, just letting you know, you are listening to Raising Your Inner Voice. My guest this evening, Molly Brown, is sharing with us kind of all about the scientific side and the engineering mindset. And really, we haven't used the word, but biased, I think, is a word that we're dancing around when it comes to any of us, really, getting outside of our own perspective. And we are supporting the beliefs that we have and the reality that we're finding based upon how much outside of our own perspective we can get. Am I wrong in going down that road? Is that where we're headed?
Yes. And so we're headed towards bias, and then we're going to speed, just straight past, so much deeper than bias. But that's definitely the trajectory we're on is heading right towards bias. So as an engineer wanting to know what's going on here, and how do we actually solve these technical problems, it now has nothing to do with aerospace, and it now has nothing to do with hardware or finance or business. It now has to do with how do we change our thinking, and what is going on? What is our connection, our emotional connection to these models? Yeah. What's going on there? So the term bias, or the understanding of data bias or confirmation bias, is published on and known. And what I found is that it's so far it's not confirmation bias isn't an intentional bias, but it's I don't think bias is the right word for it, because it's not something that can be compensated for or trained out of, the way the brain works, the way that the thinking mechanism. I don't even want to specifically say brain or mind. There's, I don't know, hours of
why not?
We could just, because what's the difference between, are we talking about a brain or the mind, or just thinking in the brain, or that's such a esoteric conversation. It's such a
interesting, because I think of the mind, I think of the brain as being one item. But you're saying that it's more holistic than that?
Well, so like
It's
just
more
a little eddy
complicated.
current, like a side current is
Yeah.
like, does the brain think? And is what's
Ah.
going on in the brain, the electrical impulses, are those thoughts?
You just asked me, does the brain think?
Yeah.
That's a really funny and entertaining question.
Right. Or do we think, like, does the bike pedal itself, or do we pedal and the bike wheels turn? It's kind of
Yeah.
where's the cause and the effect, and cause and effect is mathematically we would call that something that could be complicated, having many causes and effects, versus something that's not chaotic. There's another C word that I'm missing between complicated and chaotic, but mathematically there are things that are like a different class of things that are not cause and effect, like evolution. It's not cause and effect.
No.
It's co-creative. It's co-creative, and that's still not the word I'm looking for. Like the term for it, but it's where things. It's not like pushing over a domino. One pushes over the next, and then the next, and the next.
Okay.
And
Yep.
which is kind of, an engineering root cause is assuming that that in and of itself, cause and effect, is a model.
Okay.
And to look for effect, and then look for what caused it, and back out of it, or to model forward and say what could this cause effect, and what could that become a cause of, and down and down and down. It's all a very linear relation, and there are many things that don't obey that model.
Okay.
They don't behave that way, that they're co-create. Like a conversation is co-creative. Like we don't know where it's going to go until we start talking.
Right.
So it's that is how much of nature behaves. Is not like we're going from A to B and we're going left foot, right foot, straight there. That it becomes like you obey a large suite of laws at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the first word that came to my mind when you were describing a conversation, I think of it as an adventure, right? Like it's because we don't know where it's going. And half the time when I interview people and chat with people, whether it's listeners, whether it's guests, I'm always amazed at where the conversation goes, because I don't have that expectation of like, oh, well, clearly we're going to be talking about this and that's going to lead to that. We end up in a place and it's like, oh, I didn't expect to be here.
Mm-hmm. And that ability is allows for the adventure to happen with an agenda, with an end point in mind.
Yep.
It dismisses the adventure. It prevents the adventure from unfolding and happening. And that is basically what we're watching happen, or what I was watching happen with these models of saying, like, this is what the answer looks like, and we'll accept anything that helps us, that gets us to this answer. But if it doesn't support this answer, it can't be. The data must be wrong. The observation must be somehow invalid. And that's that. I started to realize that how the mind is working. It's not that we cannot train the bias out of it with PowerPoints or adventure train. Like you can't go out and do trust exercises as a team and then not come back biased. You can't do PowerPoints. It can't be that is how the mechanism of, we'll say, the mind works, is it draws the target around the arrow.
Yeah. And it's trying to hone in on things. It's trying to define, it's trying to not separate, but it's distinguish, right? I think that the mind is trying to distinguish one from another and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. It's trying to find it. It has a belief about reality, an assumption about reality. And then it looks for ways to support that assumption about reality. So that could be, in business, that's the 20% profit, or whatever your goal target is. And then then the mind starts seeing how do we close the gap between here and there.
Right.
And the important thing to realize about that is all of the assumptions. And then this is where coming to this within the physics and not just the observation of the business and engineering and how they're reacting with data, but building up physics through Newtonian into quantum, into the consciousness, and on all of the things that studying of physics was introducing to me also is 100, all of our assumptions about reality, all of the arrows that we have placed are imaginary. They're made up. There is no truth. There is no absolute truth. There is no finding or getting enough data to find the absolute truth about anything, including the very physicalness of the very physical world. That all of it is a perception, and all of it is existing only inside our concept of it. We are all living in our own models, and we are all interacting with each other through lenses of our own model. And then as we interact with another person, building what business relationships, romantic, all kinds of relationships, it's the crossing of your lens and your model looking out and their lens and their model looking out, and whether or not you can even how you perceive each other through that. There is no actual way that even Jay Foss looks. There's a way that you assume you look, and there's a way that you see yourself in the mirror, and there's a way that the people who love you see you, and there's a way that strangers who don't even know you see you, and there's a way that people who knew you when you were younger and little see you. There isn't even.
But you're saying there's no objective reality? Because I think of what we're hinting at here is there's subjective reality, and then I'm going to chew on this now. Is there such a thing as objective reality? What's your takeaway on that before we break?
No, and we'll go into. So now we're going to start talking about physics to leap.
So cool. Dear listener, you are welcome to join the conversation. Because this is a pre-recorded interview, you're welcome to send me a voice message or record a message and send that in. You can text it to 617-843-5393. I'll say that again, 617, it's a wicked Boston number, 617-843-5393. That's how you can add your voice to the conversation this evening, and we'll make sure that we play that before a future episode. I think we're going to touch on time at some point this evening. I just have an inkling, a feeling about that. But stay with us, and we'll be back shortly.
Stay with us as we continue raising your inner voice with Jay Foss.
So follow the sun. Which way the wind blows when this day is done.
Hi folks, this is Gerard Moynihan of Moynihan Lumber. If you're replacing the windows in your home, please see the Anderson 400 series windows on display at any of our 3 locations in North Reading, Beverly, or Plastown, New Hampshire. The Anderson 400 is attractive, durable, energy efficient, and reasonably priced. Remember, Anderson is the most trusted name in windows. See the Anderson 400 at any of our 3 locations. That's North Reading, Beverly, or Plastown, New Hampshire, or at MoynihanLumber.com.
Moynihan Lumber, we measure up.
If you have any issues, topics, or voices that you think would be great to be heard on this show, please reach out, jay.foss@me.com. If you want to add your voice to the conversation, record a voice memo and email it to me, or tune in live, Sunday evenings at 7 p.m.
How's your 401k? I'm Luke Noble of Noble Financial Group. As a certified financial planner, I know you can't plan for everything, but we can prepare you for life's twists and turns. We'll make a plan to help your money last through your retirement years. Our team is dedicated to helping you achieve your financial goals. Let us help. Visit NobleFinancialGroupLLC.com.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through MML Investor Services. Member SIPC. Noble Financial Group is not an affiliate or subsidiary of MML Investor Services.
for me.
Okay. So when I was first introduced to quantum physics, kind of the beginner model of it, the introductory level course of it, I was told there's a size scale that anything below a Planck scale, anything, smaller than an atom, a subatomic particle, it lives in quantum land and has really funny quantum physics associated with it. But anything bigger than that, like atom size or bigger, obeys Newtonian physics, which is the physics of a baseball. Like it is in a place, it's a point, it's in a place. If you put a force on it, it will move according to the force. And so anything bigger than this kind of size scale, we can ignore quantum effects about and just treat it as a particle, as a baseball.
Okay.
And that's true. You can, because we can go to the moon like that, right? We can treat a rocket ship like a baseball, like a Newtonian object that has that is in one place and has a speed and momentum at that place, and we can measure all of those things at the same time, which is important. You said time is going to come up. Yes, time is going to come up. Like, how many things can you know about an object at the same time?
Yeah.
Is different in the quantum world versus the Newtonian world.
But are they the same world?
So they have to be, right? So that's where the 101 course, the introductory way of thinking about it, can say, like, all right, let's learn to solve some of these problems. Let's learn to do some of this math on a smaller than a Planck scale, on things that are small, like an electron, something that's smaller than an atom. But also, it's the same. It's the same world. It's the same box of three-dimensional space and time.
Right.
Right. So somehow the truth has to be true for both of those. Or I've also said there's no objective truth. We got into this by saying there's no objective truth. So I can't really circular reference and try to bring objective truth into it. But the laws we're looking for some kind of coherence in understanding the world, the physical world.
So something that's expanded my mind, and I'm not sure originally who said this, but a marketing guy in Austin, Texas that I follow, Roy Williams, he is quoted with saying the opposite of a profound truth isn't actually a falsehood. It's an equal but opposite profound truth, right? So things that can be truly opposite isn't like up and down or opposite, but rather something that's so profoundly true, i.e. subjective reality. Objective reality can be like they aren't mutually inclusive or exclusive. They're just opposites.
Yeah, kind of how like the people that you love the most can make you the most mad.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really not the best person to explain the math of the physics of it, because as I was learning this and wrapping my head around this, I kind of, had a decision point of, do I go back to school and do I study the quantum physics? Do I want to really understand how to do the math of this, how to find the particles, build the things? Do I want to live in model land with the math, which is tempting because the math is beautiful. And
says a person that loves data.
Yeah, it's very tempting, and school is just such a friendly place for a person like me. Academia, I've loved it. I loved school. I loved studying this stuff, and so it's very tempting.
Wow.
But also, what good is the model? Like what the model has implications. The only point of a model is to live in the real world with it, is to have it produce a quality of life for you. All of our aerospace models are to enable us to fly and collapse that distance between us so that we can do things in our life that we want to. So looking at it, do I want to go into the model and go live in the model, or do I want to take the profound implications of I like how Shakespeare said it too. There is nothing, either good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. And
I'm going to repeat that. There is nothing, either good or bad, that thinking makes.
But the thinking makes it so.
But thinking makes it so. Huh. What do you like about that?
So when we're trying to reconcile the quantum world with the when I say quantum world too, I'm thinking think of, we'll boil it down to that there's nothing there until you look at it being there. That there's a plural potential of an electron. There's a plural potential of how a tiny piece of matter is being. Not a supposedly not a conscious piece of matter, right? We haven't put consciousness in a single electron, but this electron is being all these different kinds of ways until it is interacted with, until it is observed by something measuring it.
Okay. Yep.
And until it's right. And Schrodinger's cat, I think people have heard of Schrodinger's cat, or of being a cat in a box, that there's a vial that has one of those quants. So this is a bridge. It's a thought experiment bridge between those two worlds, saying that there's that tiny subatomic particle that can be in many different states. It can be in an active state or a decayed state. And if we use that single quantum particle and the state that it's in to be the trigger on like a gas bomb in the box, then whichever state that quantum particle is in the quantum land, that doesn't behave like a baseball, it doesn't, it's not in a single state at a single time, it's in multiple states at the same time. And we put that on as a trigger on a gas bomb in a box with a cat in it.
What?
The cat is either alive or dead, depending on the cat being a baseball behaving object, right? In the macroscopic world.
Yep. That
is now the cat, something in this larger world, is either alive or dead, depending on the status of that quantum particle. So Schrodinger, he also wrote this as beautiful math, but lots of people don't think that this math is beautiful. So he also told this story about a cat, so that people who don't want to do the math could play along, could think about it, could join in and think about it too. Because this is, I mean, I have worn down so many pairs of running shoes, just running on this and thinking about it, until you realize you stopped running and you're standing in the middle of traffic and people are honking at you because you're thinking too hard. And this is, I've done this for decades. This is how I process things.
Okay.
So, so that's the bridge that, Schrodinger, one of the early thinkers of the quantum world, gives us to think about it. And I don't think he's saying it to say look, this is how it works. I think he's saying it to say, look at how absurd this is, that one world would behave one way and another world would behave the other way. So instead of diving into the model and the math of it, I took that implication. I said, okay, so how do I live my life differently? How do I solve problems differently? How do I think differently if I allow for this to be true? If I accept that this is true, that there is no objective truth, there is no objective reality. There is what my thinking is making it, there is what my conscious experience is experiencing in that adventure sort of way of it's not a cause and effect, and it doesn't have reality until it's part of my experience. And then it has reality such that I even step on it and move on from it as my new platform to be. And this is where, this and so many things that converge together is where it turns into mindset engineering or life coaching. It's now about what are the assumptions that you're making that are not true, and are they useful to you creating what it is that you want to create in your life, and are they useful for you to observe in the world around you what you want to observe and experience and interact with in the world around you? And if they're not, what would you rather be observing, experiencing, creating in the world around you? And how do you reverse engineer out of that beliefs and thoughts that you then consciously entertain and think until they very literally, very physically change you and the world around you? And so this is the same way, like applied Newtonian physics, which I loved. And then I went and I worked in aerospace as an engineer, like playing with Newtonian physics. And applied quantum physics, to my understanding of it, becomes life coaching, because it doesn't matter until there's consciousness involved, until there's a person, there's an experience happening. And that's not happening in the lab or on the blackboard. It's happening inside me and inside everybody I interact with. And so now I interact with other people as other quantum beings, as other quantum particles. And each one of us then, from the implications of understanding this and seeing myself in the world this way, I now see myself and everyone else as the foremost expert in what is it to be alive and what is it to be conscious. It's the most expert in that is you and me. It has nothing to do with an MD or a PhD or a philosopher or a leader or anybody in power, billionaire, nobody, because the only experience of being alive and conscious is somebody who is alive and conscious. No math informs, no model informs that more than the reality of living it. And most of us are not walking around recognizing that we are the expert in life and consciousness. We're not exercising our ability that way. We're not creating our life that way. We're not putting on our shoes that way. And when that lands on you and you can't run, and you just stop running because you can't move your body anymore because your mind is working so hard, and then that really lands on you, how big that is, it changes everything. It changes everything. And you are so powerful in your life and in the world. And I believe, like, the problems that we think are so big, the global warming, the climate change, the garbage island, the socioeconomic things, and all the wars and things that we think are so unsolvable, they are unsolvable in the model that we've been living in. They're unsolvable in the model where we think we're our bodies that are babies and aging and dying and have psychology and allergies and all of these need to earn money and need to make sacrifices in order to earn money. That's all a model that we're living in. And in that model, there is no world peace. In that model, there is no climate solution. There is no there's no abundance for everybody. There has to be this competition and hierarchy. And when we change the model to understand that we are life and we are consciousness, and like you in your intro also said that you have this strange belief that we're all interconnected in a way, like this is it. We are interconnected in being collectively together, being life, and collectively together being consciousness. And that informs a completely different way of living life. And the word that I think aligns with that, even though it's not traditionally used in science, is manifesting.
Huh. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't think of manifesting as being a scientific term. You're right there. For anyone just tuning in or rejoining this episode, this is Raising Your Inner Voice. And we're speaking with Molly Brown, who's founder and CEO of Mindset Engineering. And so, Molly, I'm trying to slow my thoughts down to understand. It sounds like you're in the business of helping people shift their thinking.
Absolutely.
Do you have trouble with anyone? So different levels of consciousness, right? I mean, people are open to different things based upon the level of consciousness that we are at. How do we advance to the next level if it's outside of our frame of reference?
Yeah. So one of the things I like to do to
assuming
people,
there is a next level, maybe that's a wrong assumption.
one of the things I like to do is to like rip the rug out from under people's feet of what we think science is. So much of what we think science is superstition. It's scientific superstition, no different than a religious superstition, that we're believing a lineage of people who have said, believe A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And very few people understand how and why that means what it is, and very few people really even ever apply it in their lives, to be fair. But so many of, I don't know, gravity pulls things down, the planets orbit the earth. Like we just are taught these things and we memorize them and we believe them. It's superstition. And then when you actually go into the science, there's no reason we're not falling through the floor. There's no reason my atoms of my body aren't just like mixed in with the atoms of the floor or the planet, or like how are we individually separated out? There's no physics. There's no physics to explain that. And we just take it for granted because it just is. And it's so reliable that all of the difference between that engineering and that science understanding we also.
Because engineering, just to recap, engineering is from the outside applying in, whereas science mind, you're saying, is from the inside out.
Yeah, or
understanding.
These are kind of my definitions of it too. I don't know what the official definition is, but engineering would be like, I can look and be like, look at a bird, it's flying. Flight is possible. A bird is flying. So I wonder what we got to do. Do we got to flap? Like, let's be bird-like, right. And science would be like, all right, we have the apple falls from the tree, it's gravity. And then we start looking at the planets and saying this is how gravity works and applying a law, a model of a law, versus kind of observing things and being like, you don't need to know so much the law as it's just like I just start building things and they work, and then we get 7 simple machines and we can add them together to make a bunch more stuff. And I'm not diminishing it, and I don't think one is more important than the other. They're very different ways of observing the world, and they're very different ways of thinking. And when we play with them back and forth, we see more than if we just look at it one way. So just like we're walking around in the most advanced laboratory of life and consciousness, which is your body. Like there's no science lab, there's no medical studies. There is.
We're living it.
Well, I mean the world, the life, right? There's no medical study of a cadaver. There's no life in a cadaver. All of the studies of cadavers cannot inform what life is, because you're studying somewhere where life is not. So it just really doesn't make any sense to think of that as life. Not that it's not useful for other things, but you're the life. You're living the life. There's nobody who's done all the studying of the world on a on somebody else that applies to you living in a body. And the same way, we're also walking around having these engineering level observations of like, I just don't fall through the floor. Nobody ever has. No one around me is, and I don't have to think about it. I don't have to stress about it or worry about it. Not that, scientists who live in the math, some of them, I should look up his name, really did stress and worry about it and wear lead shoes and things
Really?
because like the math is like, this is not in modern times, but in because the model says we should.
Huh.
There's nothing in the physics model saying that we wouldn't. But also in our daily living life, that would be nonsense. And there has to be continuity between the two, or at the very least, we have to recognize the living experience is truly happening, regardless of what the model says.
Yeah. But so you bring up laws, which obviously we're talking about scientific laws. So not laws that you can break, but rather laws that are the foundations and basis of reality. But that makes me think and bring it back to our earlier points of objective versus subjective, right? Because if there are laws that this is the way something works, then that would be objective, not subjective.
Sure, but none of the laws are physical, right? You can't see, the gravity isn't the tree that you're seeing or the body, the earth, the planet. You're not seeing gravity.
Right.
You're not seeing, even if you're looking at a lightning strike, you're not seeing electromagnetism. You're not seeing magnetism.
Yeah.
You're seeing magnetism displayed in a magnet. You're seeing gravity displayed in the motion of objects. There's nothing physically perceivable.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So it's a way that I would phrase it, would be, so in nature, you can't see the wind, you see the results of the wind, right? It can blow a tree, it can blow leaves, it can do this, but you can't see the wind itself. Likewise, I've heard that light, you can't see light, you see what light illuminates and reflects. So what the light is actually bouncing off of is what you're seeing, but the light in and of itself, you're not seeing because it's translucent. It's not to say it's not real, but it's not something that can be perceived the way that we think about it.
And sight is, there's no screen in the back of your head. We're not projecting this sight to even scientifically understand what are we seeing is these photons, which are quantum particles, which obey even. They're not baseball.
I was going to say, I have no
right?
clue how sight works. So if you told me that there was a projector in the back of my mind and that's how it works, I would probably believe you because I have no clue how sight works.
And that propensity to believe the offered explanation is because we are generally superstitious, scientifically superstitious. We're used to ingesting science no different than we ingest memorizing facts about history, memorizing Bible verses, memorizing things in Sunday school. That's the superstitiousness about it. And we tell stories and write myths around it in order to explain it to generation to generation. And it's that way of thinking, that model, there are problems that are unsolvable in that model.
Unsolvable.
So it's time for us to break out of that model and start to think through these things and let go the things that we have been superstitiously attached to and using.
What makes you say that it's the time for that?
Well, there's an island of garbage in, that needs in the ocean and there's a lot of the climate is changing. There's a lot of fires that are happening. There are problems that are not solvable. And not to mention, we keep fighting with other people. If the climate itself wasn't in its own threatening situation to humanity. Humanity is threatening itself.
Yeah.
Like our way of being. Well, I guess I'll just say for myself personally,
Yeah.
I want a different way of being. I choose a different way of being than being at war, than being in competition, than being adversarial to my planet and adversarial to other people. The way we manufacture things, the way technology is manufactured. I want a different way of being. And in order to do that, I need a different model. And I have found I'm not the only one who wants a different way of being, who doesn't want to watch the planet continue the way it is, to watch our behavior and treatment of it, to continue to fight with other people and see differences instead of coming together. So as people want to experience life differently, they don't want to be afraid in their life, whether it's of losing a job or of your business failing or of an economy changing or of the climate changing or of your neighbor nations doing something. Like, there's people who don't want to be afraid. In the old model, I didn't want to be afraid. And that led me to joining a military and becoming physically strong and becoming part of a force. I believed in that model. The only thing I could see in that model is to go out and fight, to conquer the thing that was scary.
Yep.
To be armed in the world was my way of not being afraid. And living through that did not lead me into no fear. It didn't lead me into feeling less afraid.
Yeah.
Being involved in a global scene of conflict did not make me see closer to peace, global peace.
Yep.
And so I needed to I started abandoning that model piece by piece by piece and requiring coherence in my new model. And as I held to the coherence in the new model, more and more and more of that old model had to be replaced and re-understood. And the way I now have a very coherent model that I can live in which I'm not afraid. I feel excited about the future. I feel every problem is solvable. The technical problems that I are that I look at, all of them are solvable. We can manufacture things differently. We don't have to be creating toxic waste and treating other parts of the world the way that we do in the way I see the model. I don't have to compete in my business. I don't have to sacrifice the quality of life I want in order to make the impact I want in my work. There's no conflict between my work and life. There's no conflict between me and people around me. And that's not because the world changed. It's because I changed the way I understood myself, which allowed me to interact in the world differently. It's complete liberation as you re-understand yourself, and then you become powerful to do the things that are in you to want to do. And part of that model, I know this is a big leap and it's not coherent or consistent with, it's not like, linear to the rest of our conversation.
Right, yeah.
The part of, an important part of that model for me that makes it work is believing that what is in me and what is in each one of us, just like we have life is inherently in you and consciousness is inherently in you, so is a desire. An entire suite of desires are inherently yours, and each one of us has that. And the old model says you need to suppress those. They will get you in trouble. They will make you break the laws. You will not be a productive member of society. It will get you in trouble when you're in kindergarten. You want to look out the window and play outside. And from then on, all of your desires are bad and wrong. And you need to push them down and get rid of them and be ashamed of them.
Yeah.
And in this new model, I recognize these desires to solve the problems that are interesting to us, to be drawn to the mat that you find beautiful, to be drawn to the people that you find interesting and beautiful, and the music that you like to dance to, and dance to it in the way that you like to dance to it. All of that is of utmost importance. That compass, that guidance system in you that tells you, I want to go outside and play. I want to talk to my friend. I want to work on this problem. I'm not at all interested in that. I don't want to do that. That guidance system is right. Follow it, use it, and build a world where that is right. I'm not saying there's no laws and there's anarchy and we're killing everybody. It's not like that. I'm not saying that. I guess
something
maybe
I wanna...
people assume that, but
no, but I think it's good and healthy to have the pushback, right? Dear listener, I hope that you're getting a lot from this conversation. We're speaking with Molly Brown here on Raising Your Inner Voice, and we're covering a lot of ground here. Really, I would love to get your perspective on this. Shoot me a voice message, 617-843-5393. I'd love to hear what you're thinking about these thoughts that we're talking about.
Want to connect with Jay? Dial in as we continue raising your inner voice.
If you don't like the way I talk, then why am I on your mind? If you don't like the way I rock, then finish your glass. We fight and we argue, you'll still love me blind. If we don't this whole thing up, guaranteed I can blow your mind. And tonight I'm alive in a dollar sign, guaranteed I can blow your mind. And tonight I'm alive in a dollar sign, guaranteed I can blow your mind.
Are you worried about the stock market, your 401k, or rising costs? Hi, I'm Luke Noble of Noble Financial Group. As a certified financial planner, I know you can't plan for everything, but our dedicated team of professionals can better prepare you so your money lasts as long as you do. Let us help. Visit NobleFinancialGroupLLC.com.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through MML Investor Services. Member SIPC. Noble Financial Group is not an affiliate or subsidiary of MML Investor Services.
What does living a better life mean? And what's your process in figuring that out? If you want to join in the conversation live, tune in Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you want to gather your thoughts first, record a voice memo and email it to jay.foss@me.com, because I would love to have your voice in this conversation. If you think someone else might need a conversation like this one, then let them know to get involved.
Hi, folks. This is Gerard Moynihan of Moynihan Lumber. Professional builders choose Andersen Windows because they are the #1 trusted and recommended window and door brand in the United States. Andersen Windows and patio doors offer beautiful natural wood interiors, low maintenance exteriors, and outstanding energy efficiency. See the complete line of Andersen Windows on display at Moynihan Lumber in Beverly, North Reading, and Plastown, New Hampshire, or visit us at MoynihanLumber.com.
Moynihan Lumber, we measure up.
Not just another talk show. It's time to be heard online and on air. Raising Your Inner Voice with Jay Foss.
And we are back here with Molly Brown. We're talking all about mindset engineering on this episode of Raising Your Inner Voice. Molly, so are there places, I mean, I feel like what you're getting at is like we can reimagine the world, right? And those desires, those innate desires that we have are good. But I'm curious if any of that ends up getting taken out of perspective. I think it's also good to have guardrails in place, right? So, I mean, we can't just all sit around and be dreamers, can we?
No. I mean, of course, we can't all sit at home and be dreamers any more than we can all sit at home and watch Netflix. Implicit in that is the assumption that's what everybody would want to do.
Yeah.
And we don't. I mean, we want to do things. Everybody I talk to, everybody I work with, has a thing they want to do, accomplish, build, create, change, whether it's art or a computer program or a business or just in their own fitness goals, like run a marathon, learn a language, play an instrument. Like I don't know anybody who's wanting to do less, to not create.
Something that can get taken out of control would be people that want to rule the world.
And that's where these laws, like recognizing, if we say like the law is thoughts become things, something like that.
Yep.
That's the law. It's how it works. The thoughts that you think are what you create. There's no goodness or badness about it.
Back to that. Yep.
So yes, if you sit and you think, I want to take this over, I want to conquer the world, dominate the world, whatever it is, you will do that. Or you will take the actions along that line.
Yep.
That because that's how the law works. And the more we recognize, the more we look out and see that that's what's happening, is people are acting out their thoughts. And more importantly, that we are acting out our own thoughts.
Right.
Because we can't change somebody else's thoughts.
Yeah.
So instead of looking at it and saying, to see everything that you're doing and know that it is in alignment with the way that you're thinking and the assumptions you've made about yourself and the world, changes how you're looking at things. Instead of seeing you and your world as you reacting to anything in your world, you recognize what what it's closer to what you're really doing is you've chosen a reaction you want to have. You've chosen a way you want to feel, because that's what we're living in is a black box that just has feelings, that just has stories and feelings in it. Then we find things in the outside world to allow us to feel the feeling that we've already decided we're going to feel.
Oh, that's
and tell the
interesting.
story we're already telling.
Because so with stories, I'm with you 100%. The stories that we tell ourselves are what we end up continuing to live in. I mean, right? I'm with you there. I haven't thought about feelings in that same sense of we're choosing to feel the things that we feel.
Mm-hmm.
Why so?
Then we're finding a thing that gives us that propels that feeling in us.
So if I want to feel more joyful, I'm actually looking for joyful things. If I want to feel sadder, then I'm looking for sad things.
100%. So you're making a decision. You as consciousness, you as life are making a decision. I choose to be joyous.
Yeah.
And you're doing it from the best equipped laboratory to generate joy that ever existed. That's you living in your body.
Why, thank you for saying that.
you the executive expert of life and consciousness, decide I want to be joyous.
Yep.
You take your laboratory and you interact in the world to find and cause yourself to feel joyous, which is acting on your decision to be joyous. And we're all the feelings that we're having, whether we're conscious, we're aware of that we're making that decision or not.
Yeah.
They're all a result of decisions that we've made. I think the clearest person that talks about that the clearest is Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Okay.
Somebody you might have heard of it.
I've heard the name, but I don't.
Conversation.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about him.
So his work, the same as I start learning and understanding this stuff, and I pivot into life coaching and interacting with people as consciousness. He starts understanding this stuff. He is a chiropractor. That's what the doctor is. And moved into, he now teaches meditation. And it has like audio guided meditations, which I really like because like my little soldier brain, I follow instructions very well. Like if you just sit me down and put audio in and walk me through meditation, I can It's pretty easy to learn. You just follow what he tells you to do. He makes it very easy.
Okay.
Then he talks about he says, when we know what and how what and why, the how becomes easier. So when you know why you're meditating, when you know how powerful your thinking is,
Yep.
when you really realize that you are choosing to feel every one of the feelings that you're feeling, and you don't like some of the feelings that you're feeling,
Yeah.
then the action step becomes, how do I choose something different? How do I choose a different feeling? And he uses meditation to make a decision on a feeling and then practice feeling that feeling with your eyes closed and your headphones on, isolated from the outside world, because that's the beginner way to do it. It's hard to go out and feel joy if you're stressed at your job and you don't like what you're doing, and you're stressed about money and you're not happy with your life.
Right.
It's hard to just open your eyes under fluorescent light in a cubicle you don't like and feel flooded with joy.
Yeah.
So go home and put an eye patch on, or put covers on your eyes, and put your headphones on, and get a warm, cozy blanket and block all of that out. And then practice feeling joy until you can sit on your own couch with your eyes open and feel joy, until you can stand up and feel joy, until you can walk around on a sunny day outside and feel joy, until you can go into your office and feel joy, until you feel so joyful in your office, you behave so differently. Then, for me, that just turned into walking into my office and quitting one day.
Wow.
And being like, I'm not gonna do this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go be a life coach. I'm gonna go talk to people for a living, which was a really strange thing for an engineer who couldn't make eye contact and stuttered to say. But that is what I felt joyous about. And I was feeling joyous enough to keep doing, stay pointing in that compass, to use that compass instead of the career plan that I had written out, to keep me financially safe and all of the things. I gave that compass up. I left that model.
So inspiring. Molly Brown, thank you so much for being a guest on Raising Your Inner Voice. Dear listener, it's back to your life right now. What are you doing? How are you living? And what are you constructing in your reality to make sure that you can maybe find joy, have more peace? What is it that you're in search of, in searching after? I would love for you to join the conversation. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. Hope that you are both kind and gentle with yourself, and that you share that same grace with others.
If you're enjoying this podcast, please help spread the word about Raising Your Inner Voice. Join the conversation live. Email jay.foss@me.com to suggest ideas to explore. Also share this podcast with your friends. Let those who need conversations like this have a chance to check it out.
Then let them know to get involved.